Hello everyone, this is part 6 of What If Naruto Fell in Love with Kurenai, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. The next morning when Kurenai awoke, she found herself in a warm place and she slowly opened her eyes and saw white. She blinked and rubbed her eyes and looked again and blinked again as she looked around, and then she saw she was being held by Naruto in his female form, but it looked different than it did the night before. Kurenai looked around and thought, okay, what the hell happened and why the hell does Naruto have wings? She tapped Naruto on the arm and nothing happened. She tried again and called his name, but again nothing happened. She sighed and slowly leaned forward and kissed him, and Naruto instantly opened his eyes and closed them again as he returned the kiss. Kurenai giggled as she broke the kiss, and Naruto yawned as he stretched and he blinked as his arms rubbed something, and he said, okay, what the hell's going on here? As he looked and saw two wings attack to his back. Kurenai got up and looked, and Naruto also stood up, and Kurenai said, maybe it's just a messed up with your see no jutsu Narukan. I mean, you may have accidentally changed your mental image for it and this was the result. Try dropping it and see what happened. Naruto nods and said, it's possible, okay here goes. As he dropped the jutsu and when the smoke cleared, Kurenai went wide-eyed and said, what the hell? As she looked at Naruto. Naruto now stood at 6 feet 3 foot tall and his whisker marks were gone from his face. His hair had grown longer and he also looked older by a year or two, and his muscles looked more defined like a track runner. In fact, he looked just like his father, but with a pair of white angel wings on his back that stopped at his ankles but went to about a foot taller than him. Kurenai said, Naruto, try moving those wings. Maybe this is some sort of trick by Anko. Naruto nods and thinks about them moving and both wings flap, and he went wide-eyed and said, okay, this is weird, I can feel them move and feel each feather and they followed my thoughts. What happened to me? Kurenai said, I don't know, why don't you just sit here and I will go get the Hokage. Maybe this has something to do with Kyuubi. Naruto nods and said, maybe, I will try and talk to it again and see if it has any answers. As he tried to sit down, but the wings withdrew into his body like they never were there as Kurenai watched. Naruto said, okay, that's weird. They acted on instinct. As he looked at his back and saw two SS on his shoulder blades. Kurenai said, try and have them come back out. Naruto thought about them coming back out and they popped back out. He then thought of them to leave and they went back in his skin. He said, cool, they follow my commands. I wonder if I can fly. As he was about to call them back out, Kurenai grabbed his hand and said, no, not inside. Naruto rubbed his head sheepishly and said, right, sorry about that. Maybe you should get the old man so he can find out what is going on. Kurenai nods, and since she was still dressed from the night before when she went to investigate the explosion, she used Shushin and left. Inside the Hokage tower, the third was reading over the report from the events of the previous night and thought, so Hinata was able to take them all out last night. Since all of the long-term missions have been cancelled, everyone was at home, and since no Hyuga were Anbu, they were all caught by the explosion. Such a shame. Now with the death of the Hyuga and Uchiha clans, Konoha has not been this week since the Kyuubi attack. I can only pray our enemies don't try anything. Just then Kurenai appeared and said, you need to come quick to my place, something's happened to Naruto. The third quickly got to his feet, not even bothering to ask what, and both shushined away. When they got to the apartment, Naruto had his wings back out and a couple of Kichibunshians looking at the wings, and each Kichibunshin also had wings, and the third said, holy yes, Minato, you're an angel. Naruto glared at him and said, not funny old man, I'm not my dad. The third chuckled and said, I know Naruto. Now do either of you have any idea what might have caused this? Both shook their head no, and the third said, I see, let me look at the seal. Naruto. Naruto took the shredded shirt he had on off and channeled chakra a moment and said, that's weird, where is it? As it did not appear. The third narrowed his eyes and thought, I think I know what happened, but I need to check some things first. He then stood up and said, Naruto, try and contact the Kyuubi. Naruto nods and sats down to meditate, and after a few minutes he said, "It's gone, old man, the cage and Kyuubi are gone. I don't understand. The sewer is still there, but all the red pipes are all blue now, and the room where the Kyuubi was is empty." The third smiled and said, "I think I know what happened. Tell me, Naruto, were you a male or female this morning when you woke up?" Naruto said, Female, why?" The third said, "What does the vanity doppelganger bloodline do?" Naruto said, "It makes it wear." "Wait, you don't mean that?" The third nods and said, "You must have done something that made the Kyuubi want to leave your body, and when that happened and you transformed as such. Can you retract those wings, Naruto?" Naruto nods and they pull back in, and then the third chuckled and said, "Naruto, how would you like to help an old man out with a little problem?" Naruto said, "Sure, old man, but what can I do, and how do you know about the doppelganger?" The third said, "I am old and wise, Naruto, and I know a great many things like any good Hokage should. Anyways, I want you to go to the Forest of Death Tower and meet Anko, Jiraiya and Kakashi there, and figure out how strong you are now and what other effect this change had on your body. Kurenai, I want you also to go with him, and I want you to put a genjutsu on him to make him look like he used to, because I want to keep this a secret for a few days. I have a plan that will help the moral of the people of Konoha, and I will explain more, but first I need to know what effects this really had on you. I would have you henge yourself, Naruto, but I don't want you to accidentally lose control of your chakra and freak out the villages just yet." "Okay." Naruto frowns and said, "Does Kakashi have to be there?" Both Kurenai and the third look at him, and the third asked, "Why?" Naruto sighed as he closed his eyes and said, "I blame Kakashi for what happened to Hinata, sir." Both blinked and Kurenai asked, "Why? He wasn't the one who killed her, Sasuke was." Naruto said, "I know, it's just that he treated Sasuke like he was his own son and ignored Sakura and me and helped give Sasuke such a big ego. I mean, it was bad enough when we were still in the academy, but after we got on the team, Kakashi purposely made it bigger, like he was Kami himself, and gave him everything he wants. I blame him, because if he would not have pampered him, then maybe he would not have tried to betray Konoha and then try and Hinata." The third thought, "Kakashi, you have loose lips, but I suppose it's good he does, so that way word can spread about my story so people don't look to close. If word got out another clan happened by one of its own in Konoha, then people would think something is wrong with Konoha as a whole, which could be bad for us now that we are weakened. You also have screwed up with Naruto, Kakashi, and I don't know what to do to fix it." As he said, "All right, Naruto, I won't have Kakashi show up, but you need to know that Kakashi is not the only one to blame about this." Naruto sighed and said, "I know, old man, and I am sorry. I guess I am still upset with the way Kakashi turned out after I got on his team. I mean, when he was in Anbu, he was always nice to me and made me feel like a real person, but once I got on his team, he basically ignored me. He did bring me some fruit once, but after that he acted like the only one of us worth his time was Sasuke, and then after all that, Sasuke was going to betray Konoha just pissed me off, and it hurts. It hurts that he always got love and kindness, and He was quieted by Kurenai putting her arms around him from behind, and she whispered, "It's alright, Naruto, I know how much it hurts. I'm here for you now, and you don't have to go through this alone." The third asked, "How did you know Kakashi was Anbu, Naruto?" Naruto said, "His smell, old man. I learned when I was a kid who smell I could count as a friend and who I couldn't. I remember the Anbu Inu saving me several times and watching over me in the hospital and at my apartment, and I remember him paying for an extra bowl of ramen for me on my birthday. I was so excited when I first met Kakashi and recognized his smell and thought that I actually had a sensei who cared for me as a person and not a piece of garbage. I guess I got issues, huh?" The third said, "No, Naruto, it's alright, I understand, but I want you to promise me you will give Kakashi a chance to make things right with you. I mean, you have to understand that he has issues also. That he has, the Sharingan, he got that from his teammate right before he thought if he could help Sasuke, then he would be honoring the memory of his teammate, and I am sorry he ignored you, Naruto. I will try and make things better after the exams, but for now just go with them." Naruto said, "Alright, old man, and I guess if I am going to give him a chance, then he better help me with these wings. Maybe his eye will be useful for something after all." The third chuckled and said, "Alright, and Naruto, you're not alone anymore, you have people who do care for you. You can't let your past hold you down or it will eat you alive. Live for today and the future. as he left in a swirl of leaves. Kurenai said, "H's right, Naruto, you're not alone anymore. Go get your things and I will get mine and we can leave." Naruto nods and walks to his room to get ready but stops when he goes to put his shirt, vest, and coat on and said, Tenshi, can you help me a moment? I'm stuck. Kurenai came in ready and said, "I think you're more deserving of that name now than I do, Naruto, but what do you need?" Naruto said, "I don't want to ruin my cloths when my wings come out, so can you help me figure something out?" Kurenai nods and puts each of the items against Naruto's back and then pulls them away, making SS in them 3 inches wider than the SS, and hands them back to Naruto. He tries the shirt first and then makes his wings come out, and then tried the vest and finally his long coat he wore during the preliminaries. After he had them all on and grabbed his things, Kurenai put a henge on him to make him look like he normally did and they left. As they walked down the street, Asuma walked up and said, "Hello Kurenai, how are you holding up? I heard about Hinata." Kurenai said, "I'm okay now. How is your team taking it?" Asuma said, "Choji and Shimakaru are fine but Ino is not. She talked to Sakura and heard the truth about what happened, and now Shush is disgusted with Sasuke and does not know what to think. I cancelled my team's practice today and when we left she was beating a log to death. How are yours taking it?" Kurenai said, "I don't know. I haven't seen them yet today. We usually meet in the afternoon since their families are mostly training them since Shino the only one to advance." Asuma nods and looks at Naruto, and Kurenai said, "He knows also Asuma." Asuma said, "How are you Naruto?" Naruto said, "I think Itachi should have killed the bastard with the rest of his clan," in AS voice. Asuma Winston said, "I see, so how is your training for the finals coming along?" Naruto glanced at him and said, "Depends on when I have to face Gaara." Asuma asked, "Why him? You don't seem to be that worried about Shikamaru or Kiba or the other genins from Sand, so what's so special about Gaara?" Naruto looked at him and then at Kurenai and said, "You mean you don't know about him?" Asuma blinked and said, "No, what?" Naruto looked around and said, "Do yourself a favor, tell Shikamaru that if he faces Gaara, forfeit immediately or he will s." Asuma looked at Naruto and said, "Naruto, Shikamaru has trained a lot and I am sure that no matter what Kakashi has taught." He was cut off by a blast of ki from Naruto, who said, "Don't ever say that bastard taught me anything. I will meet you at the gates, Kurenai sensei," as he turned and walked away fast. Kurenai punched Asuma in the arm and said, "Just great Asuma, you just had say that, didn't you?" Asuma asked, What did I do?" Kurenai sighed and said, "Look, Naruto is pissed at Kakashi right now because Kakashi has basically abandoned him and Sakura since day one as a team to focus on Sasuke, and then with what happened last night he blames him for that, also for making Sasuke feel like a king. The only thing he learned from Kakashi was tree climbing, and that was so he could mostly show Sasuke. Now if you are smart I would listen to Naruto warning, because from what he told me Gaara is like him, a Jinchuriki, but unlike Naruto he has no qualms about hurting or killing someone. The Hokage has already checked in on it and it turns out Gaara was made a living weapon on purpose. Now I got to go and try and calm him down before he blows something or someone up," as she walked after Naruto. Asuma sighed and thought, what's up with her and why is it she is with Naruto? I need to warn Shikamaru about Gaara somehow though. I wonder why Dad has not told me about him yet, as he left toward the Hokage Tower. As Naruto was going toward the Forest of Death he had to slam on the brakes as someone stepped in front of him, stopping him. He blinked and looked at the person and thought, not now, why does she have to show up now? And said, "Yes Mrs. Haruno, can I help you with something?" in a kind voice as he put on his emotional mask. Mrs. Haruno said, "Hello Naruto-san, I was wondering if you would talk with me in private a few moments." Just then Kurenai landed on the ground by Naruto and Naruto said, "Anything you need to speak to me about will have to be spoken in front of Kurenai sensei here. I have things I need to do," still in a kind voice. Mrs. Haruno said, "Actually I would like to talk to you alone Naruto, can we make an appointment then? Please." Naruto looked at her and said, "Anything you tell me I will tell her anyway, so you might as well tell her also. I don't keep secrets from her." Mrs. Haruno nods and said, "Hello Muz, I am Rukia Haruno and I am Naruto aunt," making both blink and look at her. Naruto looked at Kurenai and she nods and he said, "All right, I suppose some tea won't hurt anything," as he clenched his fist. Kurenai put her hand on his shoulder and her relaxed and they followed Rukia to her home. As they arrived they saw Sakura walking toward the house and she said, "Hello Naruto, Kurenai-sensei, mother, what are you doing here?" Both Naruto and Kurenai looked at each other and Kurenai said, "Your mother here said she wished to speak to Naruto and she claimed she was his aunt and offered some tea. Naruto said he would tell me whatever was said anyways since I am helping train him a little for the finals so she allowed me to come." Sakura said, "I see. Mind if I sit in on what you say?" as she looked at her mom. Her mom nods and walks inside the house and held the door open allowing the three to walk in before she closed the door and said, "Please make yourself at home, I will be back in a moment after I put some water on to boil," as she left the room. Naruto looked at Sakura and said, "What's going on Sakura-chan? I didn't know we were related," in a goofy voice. Sakura said, "Cut the act Naruto, I know about you being my cousin. The Hokage told me last night," in a soft whispering voice. Naruto paled and said, "What did he tell you?" Sakura said, "He gave me a scroll from my father but only after I heard a little conversation in a bathroom," making both Kurenai and Naruto go wide-eyed. Kurenai asked, "What kind of conversation?" feeling a knot in her stomach. Sakura said, "Oh nothing Tenshi, just about how my inner self is scarier than Kyuubi and a few other things. Don't worry, I don't see you as it Naruto. In fact I am only here now to get my things because I am moving out. I can't stand what my mother did to you and I told her. I also learned the truth about why I was born and to tell the truth I feel." She was interrupted by her mother who walked back into the room and said, "Now that the tea is on I suppose I should start to tell you why I wanted to speak with you Naruto. I think Sakura should also hear this because this concerns her also. I know you must hate me Naruto but at least give me one chance to tell you my story. If after the story you refuse to talk to me again or want to kill me I will not think ill of you or try and stop you. All I ask for is a chance. Please, both of you," as she looked at them. Naruto looked at Sakura and sighed and said, "I guess Kami wants to make my life a joke today and I am being asked by everyone to give them a chance so why not," as he sat down on the couch and Kurenai sat beside him. Sakura sat beside her on the couch. Rukia sighed and said, "It starts before either of you were even born. I was 15 at the time and my parents who were merchants were both killed during a supply trip by bandits. I was also a civilian and we lived above our family store. It was in a village about 2 days travel from Konoha and after they were killed the bank foreclosed on our home and kicked me out. I had no money and the only SKS I had were as a merchant but with no place to stay I wound up living on the streets. It was not long before I was offered a place to stay and a job as a party girl." Sakura looked at her mom and thought, "So she was a prostitute, this just makes me feel even worse about myself." Rukia said, "At first all I had to do were a few dances and show a little F. I did not want to be whore but I found out that about a week in that I had to pay for my place to stay with 500 a week or else I would become a slave. I got desperate because I only made around 300 a week off of tips and dances and so I tried to leave but the boss of the place locked me up in a room for 2 weeks with no food and only a glass of water every 2 days. He then told me I was 1200 in the hole after he took the money I had already made. That was when Jiraiya-sama came in with your father Naruto." Naruto looked at her and she said, "Jiraiya-sama was trying to get Minato-sama to agree to have a bachelor party and he was pretty wasted but Minato kept saying your mother would kill him and he did not need one. Your father left without a second glance but Jiraiya-sama decided to boast about himself and started flashing money around to any who would listen to him brag. I made 3,000 that night and I paid my boss and left the village looking for somewhere to make a new start away from my embarrassment. On the road I was attacked by some bandits and they stole my money and were about to arm me when Jiraiya-sama and Minato-sama showed up. They killed the bandits but one got away with my money and Jiraiya-sama felt sorry for me so they brought me to Konoha. When we got here they helped me get a job at the library and also a place to stay but I could only barely survive off of that but then the library burned down thanks to some stupid genin and I lost my job and I got scared because I was afraid I would be back on the street and would wind back up in trouble like I was before so I tried to think of some way to survive when I met your father Chad, Sakura. He was looking for someone who could help as a midwife and was wondering if I knew anyone who could help. I asked if it was for his wife and he said that it was for his sister and that she did not want to use some random ninja during her pregnancy. I lied and told him I did because I needed the job and everything was fine until your mother hit her 6th month of pregnancy. When she did, she started having complications and they discovered I did not know anything, so Chad went to fire me for lying to him, and since I was living in their home at the time I had no place to go and only a small amount of money, so my fear made me do something I have regretted since that day. I told Chad that if he did not do what I tell him I would sell out your mother and father to Iwa because I knew they had kept their relationship a secret from your father's enemies. As she said this, Naruto was clenching his fist and Kurenai gasped. Sakura remained silent and Rukia said, anyways, I told him if he would agree to marry me then I would keep my lips shut and he would not tell anyone what I threatened. He agreed and he lied to his family and told them he loved me so they would let us be married, never telling them what I did. Then about a month later he went missing on a mission, and since I had no job I found out I also could not touch any of the money he lived on because to do so had to have a blood relation of the Uzumaki family, so I became scared agent, but Naruto father let me become a member of the civilian council as the library fund advisor since I had experience as a librarian. Then Chad returned nearly S and he was furious because he was told how I tried to get to the money in his account when I thought he was S, and he threatened to have me arrested for treason, but that night an Iwa assassin came and tried to kill your mother. Not because of the fact she was Minato wife but because she was the Raisenkage of Whirlpool before it was destroyed. I bluffed and told him that was a sleeper spy I told about her, and if anything happened to me I had friends who would send the info I had, so he backed down but not before I made sure that I had a way to survive if he did S on a mission, so I forced him to have S with me until I was pregnant. At this all of them were looking at her and Naruto said, you know, if I was really the demon you said I was I would kill you right now, as he held his hands out for all to see as blood flowed from his hands where his nails dug into them. Sakura said, Mother, I don't know what to think of you. I mean, as she looked away. Kurenai remained silent and said, I think you should continue your story now, Mutaruno, because as it stands now I can guarantee you won't get another chance, as she put her hand on Naruto's shoulder. Rukia nods and said, right, well anyways, as you know the Kyuubi came and Minato, Kushina, and Chad all S, and I knew who Naruto was since I had heard Minato and Chad argue over it, and so I chickened out and joined a majority of the council asking for his death even though I knew we were wrong. I thought of only myself until Sakura was born. When I had her I stopped worrying about myself and worried about her. That was why when the third asked me that day if I would take you I knew if I did they would hurt Sakura and I couldn't take the thought of her getting her. She was all I had in the world, so I made sure the third would never ask me agent by calling you a demon and acting like others do. I thought that if you never knew what I said or the truth about how things happened then my sins would never come back to haunt me. I was only 17 when I had Sakura. I was scared and stupid back then, and I know I will never be able to make it up to either of you what I have done, but I had to try and ask for both of your forgiveness. Please, forgive me, and if my saying I'm sorry is not enough then tell me what will be and I will do it. If you want I will commit ritual S, but please, you now know of my sins, please pass judgment on me. As she sat on her knees with her head on the floor bowing toward Naruto and Sakura. Naruto was silent for several moments and said, do you really mean you have changed from the person you were? Rukia said, yes, please allow me to prove it. Naruto sighed and looked at the ceiling and said, if you would have asked me this before we went on our first C-rank mission I would have told you to kill yourself and never looked back. However, on that mission I saw how desperate people can be when they have nothing left. I also understand you wanting to protect Sakura, so I will give you a task. Making all three women look at him. Rukia asked, what is it? Whatever it is I will do it. Naruto reached into his vest and pulled out a scroll and grabbed a pen off the desk and began writing, and after several minutes he stopped and rolled the scroll up and said, this scroll contains a list of names. The people on this list are people I consider family to me. If you want my forgiveness then you will have to go to each of these people and talk to them. Find out what they think of me and why they are people I care for. Once you have talked to each of these people, come back and talk to the last person on the list, and when you do I want you to tell me exactly what you have learned from talking to these people. If you truly learn what I hope you will I will forgive you, but if you don't then you're not really sorry to me and only doing this to get Sakura to move back in. Now if you will excuse me I need to go blow something up. As he got up and left. Kurenai got up and followed and Sakura said, Mom, I don't know what to say. I mean I am upset at you but like Naruto I also saw the pain and suffering and desperation of people when we went to Wave. I saw a little 5-year-old girl begging for food and saw a little boy who had lost all hope. I don't know what to think at the moment. When you go to tell Naruto what you learned let me be there also. That way maybe I can understand what to feel. For right now I don't hate you Mom for what you did before I was born, I pity you. I don't know what to think about what you did after I was born though. It's going to take some time for me to understand that. I still can't live here right now. I need some time to think. I already talked to Tenten and Shush is going to let me stay at her place for a little while so I need to get the rest of my stuff, as she got up and went to gather her things before leaving. Kurenai caught up with Naruto at the gates to the Forest of Death and she said, Are you okay? Naruto said, No, I'm not. I want to hate her, I really do, but I can't because I understand her fears better than anyone. I know what it's like to be hungry, scared, alone, and now that I am with you I don't feel that way but if we ever broke up I don't think I am strong enough to go back to being alone. It scares me to think about and I might be just as desperate as she was. That's what makes me upset the most. I don't hate the woman who blackmailed my family and used them. I pity her, as he looked at the sky. Kurenai said, I know Naruto, I understand also. I know what it's like also to be alone and scared. Naruto looked at her and said, Really, you never told me that. Kurenai said, I had just entered the academy when my mother was killed on a mission. I was scared and confused. I knew how to cook a little and also how to shop for groceries a little but I did not have very much money. I got desperated and luckily for me a friend of my mother's got me a job to work at on the weekends to give me a little money but I had to be careful with it or I would not have enough food and utilities. It was not enough to go use on silly little things like most kids my age did. I remember kids making fun of me because I did not have any parents anymore and that I would never amount to anything. That's why I vowed to myself to become a true female ninja like my mother and make a name for myself. So that way I can prove I was something. Naruto sighed and said, Life's fed up. Kurenai giggled and laughed and said, Yes it is. Now come on, the others are probably waiting on us. Don't want to be later then Kakashi. As she placed her hands on his shoulder and they shushed into the tower. For those wondering why I did not have her just shush them straight to the tower. It takes a lot of chakra to do shushin over a long distance and it's like 5 miles across the Forest of Death to the tower and also around 5 miles from her apartment so she would have been exhausted from using shushin to go that far so that's why I did not have her do it. A little earlier in the Hokage tower the third said, So you three understand what has happened to Naruto. I want you to find out the extent to the change to his body with the death of the Kyuubi as well as his actual SK level. I also want this to remain an S-rank secret for the time being. I don't want to start even more trouble with the village for now. Now everyone but Kakashi may leave. Jiraiya and Anko both bowed and left using shushin and the third said, Kakashi, I must warn you about something else. As of right now Naruto blames you for what Sasuke did. Kakashi said, But sir, why does he blame me? Not understanding. The third said, Kakashi, Naruto knew from the first day on your team you were the Anbu Inu, he remembered your smell and knew you helped him as a child. He thought that with you as his sensei he would actually be treated as a person but after the first day you threw him away to focus mostly on Sasuke. He blames you because you gave everything to Sasuke while ignoring both him and Sakura and then Sasuke goes to not only defect but also hurt one of his only friends in the worst possible way. You have screwed up with him Kakashi and you have better use this chance helping him to fix it because I doubt you will get another chance. Now Kurenai is there for emotional support for Naruto because they have a friendship. She was there for him after his first K when you weren't. He trusts her and has told her things he has not even told me so you may not have a warm reception with her also because she is protective of him. Now go. Kakashi nods and disappears in a swirl of leaves. When he arrived he saw Naruto and Kurenai both arrive in a swirl of leaves and he said, Yo, making everyone look at him and Naruto scowled. Kakashi thought, damn, he really does blame me. I guess I did screw up after all. Jiraiya saw this and sighed before saying alright Gaki, drop the henge so we can see what we are dealing with. Naruto nods and looks at Kurenai who cancels the justu and everyone gasp at the change and Kakashi thought, he looks exactly like his father now. Jiraiya thought, there is no denying you are your father's son. Anko licked her lips and thought, your boyfriend has become Hokage-chan. You better claim him before someone else does. Kurenai asked, have you been informed about the rest of his changes? Jiraiya said, we know about the QB being S. Is there anything else? Kurenai sweet drops and said, oh yeah, you might want to prepare yourselves for this one. Go ahead Naruto, as she steps away. Naruto nods and leans forward a little and suddenly two huge-ass angel wings pop out of his back and Anko said, holy yes, the Gaki went from being a demon boy to a fallen angel, talk about irony. Naruto glared and said, shut up chicken bear, as he smiled and stuck out his tongue. Anko pulled out a kunai and threw it at Naruto whose left wing moved in front of him automatically and deflected it. Everyone looked and Naruto said, whoa, that was cool, it reacted on its own. Jiraiya said, so besides being taller and having wings, do you feel any different? Naruto thought a moment and said, I feel lighter, like I lost a lot of weight. I also feel a lot stronger and like I have more chakra. Jiraiya thought a moment and said, alright Gaki, let's start off with you mass training. I want you to create as many Kijibunshin as you can in one go so we can see how much your chakra reserves have been affected. Naruto nods and puts his hands in a seal and said, Taju Kijibunshin no Jutsu, and suddenly the entire area was covered in clones. Kakashi went wide-eyed and pulled up his high 8 and said, it looks like there are around 1200 here. Naruto frowned and said, it's strange, I created just as many as I used to but I don't feel like I used as much chakra as I used to. Kakashi looked at Naruto and said, you could make 1200 at a time Naruto. Jiraiya said, he maxed out at 1500 when he used QB chakra also and he maxed out at 1000 on his own before Kakashi. You should have known as his sensei what he could do. Kakashi frowned and thought, great, does everyone know how much I fed up? Though I do admit this was impressive, if I had known he could have done this and had knew about the benefit I could have helped his chakra control a lot, as he realized he really did screw up. Jiraiya said, alright Gakis, divide into 12 even groups, Anko will take 3, Kakashi will take 3, Kurenai will take 3, and I will take 3 and I want the real Naruto with me also. Anko, have him work on whatever you were teaching him, Kurenai, I want you to work on his chakra control seeing where it is at. If it has changed work with him on whatever he needs improvement on. If it has gotten better teach him the next exercise in the workout. Kakashi, I want you to take your group and start teaching him any wind jutsu you have copied. If my guess is right with his natural affinity as wind then those wings can be used like that sand girl used her fan to help him amplify the effect. Now divide up and move to separate areas. Don't dispel any of you unless you run out of chakra or Naruto dispels you. Also don't do any taijutsu. I will work with the original on that while I test his real body. Now go. Everyone nods and they divided up but Kakashi did not like the way his group looked. 300 people who looked like his sensei all frowning at him. Yeep, this was going to be a long day for him. Kurenai pulled her group over by a stream and said, alright, I want 100 of you to work on tree climbing, 100 water walking, and 100 leaf balancing. Each group nods and began working and Kurenai frowned and said, well it looks like your control is actually better now than before since none of you seem to be wasting any chakra doing these exercises. I want the 100 who did the leaf exercise to continue to do it but on top of water also. I want the ones on water to also get a leaf and do both exercises. The ones on the trees I want to do them also but with kunais instead of leaves. Each nodded and began to work and when a few went up in smoke on both water and the trees she said, alright, now we got a guide to go by, let's continue, and thought, so his control is high chunin. It has gone up but it still needs some work. Anko looked at her group and said, alright Gakis, I want all 300 of you to divide into groups of 50 and start working on those 5 jutsu I gave you. I want you each to do them until you dispel. The last 50 I want you to test out those wings by dodging these, as snakes flew out of her coat at them. Kakashi said, alright, I am going to teach you Futen, Daytop a great breakthrough. One of the clones said, I already know that one. Kakashi sighed and said, alright, how about Fusagen Dust Wind? Each of the clones looked at each other and Kakashi said, "Alright, I want 50 of you to work on the Futen Daitopper and make sure you can still use it, and I want 50 of you to memorize these hand signs and begging working on them also," as he demonstrated the jutsu going slow enough for each of them to see. 100 of the clones quickly left to go work on those and Kakashi said, "Alright, let's see, while they are working on them, do any of you know Futen Daikamaitaki Great Cutting Whirlwind?" After saying that none of them knew it, he smiled and said, "Alright, I want 100 of you to work on this jutsu," as he demonstrated it, and then the 100 left to practice it. Kakashi turned to the last 100 and said, "Alright, the last two I know are Kei's no Yaibo Blade of Wind, and Kamaitaki Cutting Whirlwind Technique. I want you to divide into two groups of 50. Here are the two techniques." As he demonstrated them. After the group broke off to try the jutsu, he sat down and waited about 30 minutes and then went to check on the group. When he found the first group, he thought, "Okay, well, they do know that jutsu, but it's a good idea to make sure it's mastered." As he went to the next group and thought, "Damn, H has nearly got that one down." As he went to find the next group, he fell on his butt when he found that not only had most of the clones figured out the jutsu and were trying to modify it. He then went to find the last two groups and he thought as he went to sit back down, "I fed up big time. For him to get those techniques that good means he is a jutsu freak. H is getting 'em almost as fast as the Sharingan did for Sasuke. I had a prodigy on my team and ignored him. No wonder he hates me," as he sat down to sulk. A Kajbunshin arrived a moment later and said, "Hey Kakashi-sensei, we got this jutsu down, can you show us something else?" Kakashi said, "Sure, anything you interested in." The clone said, "We want to learn those jutsu you and Zabuza used. The water jutsu if we can." Kakashi smiled behind his mask and said, "Sure," as he followed the clone to the group he came from. Jiraiya led Naruto away from everyone and said, "Alright Gaki, I want you to have 100 of your clones to go and work on the Rasengan, the next 100 I want to work on Doton, Yomi Numa Swamp of the Underworld. I want 50 of you to work on Hari Jizu, Underworld Guardian Spikes. The last 49 I want to experiment with the wings and see if you can fly and what else they can do. The real Naruto I want to fight me so I can test you. Ready, go," as he charged Naruto. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.